So in today's episode, I have one of the coolest watches I've ever reviewed here on the channel. It's a watch made by Singer, and I think you guys are really gonna like this watch. So you might be wondering, who is Singer? Well, for those who love both cars and watches might find this name kind of familiar. That's because the same guys that designed some of the most incredible custom Porsche 911s also created this watch. Now, unlike many brands that do crossovers, Singer created a watch that's both unique and impressive when it comes to the caliber. The caliber is actually so impressive that it could almost rival the Ailangan Untitled. Yes, this caliber is that impressive. Now, the Track1 is a result of a three-way partnership between the founder of Singer, Mr. Rob Dickerson, a watch designer, Mr. Marco Barricino, and a well-established watchmaker, Mr. Jean-Marc, who actually developed the central chronograph caliber, which actually we're going to touch on in a little bit. Now, first, let's start off with the design. In a world of watches that look extremely similar to one another, this one is quite different. Like their distinguished car designs, this watch has a very refreshing new look that isn't your typical run-of-the-mill. However, that said, this watch is definitely not for everyone, and certainly the size could either make it or break it for someone. Now, at 43mm with a thickness of 15mm thanks to the AgenGraphe caliber, on paper the watch has a lot of presence. That said, the 1970s lugless design makes it very wearable for most wrists, which is what makes this size more tolerable and comfortable. Now, the AgenGraphe caliber is actually fitted perfectly to the watch case, so the watch at 43mm, though it is big, they didn't just make it big for the sake of having the watch big, the movement actually fits this case perfectly. Now, the case is almost fully brushed with very minor polishing, which gives the watch an extremely sporty look. Not to mention the mixture of white, black, and orange accents gives it that unique kind of racing aesthetic, and the strap of course completes it and puts everything together. Now, although chronographs could be a bit of a novelty, if you are going to actually time your laps, I would personally prefer this layout with the pushers at 10 and 2. It just makes a lot more sense and it's easier to utilize rather than having everything in one side, but that's just my opinion, of course. Now, those with a keen eye may have noticed something while staring at this dial. The text actually says this watch is an automatic chronograph, yet when we took a look at it, there wasn't any rotor. Like most who've never seen this caliber before, I thought this was clearly a mistake because this is definitely a manual wind chronograph, or so I thought. Now, the AgenGraphe required more than a decade of research and development to create. Now, to fully understand the caliber AGH6361, it's helpful to remember that unlike conventional chronographs, all three registers, seconds, hours, and minutes are actually on the same axis. That's how they kept everything extremely compact and in the center. That's why it's called a central chronograph. Now, as we mentioned before, this is a self-winding automatic chronograph, and yet you can't see any rotor through the case back. That's because it's actually on the dial side of the movement rather than the typical bottom, which we typically see on most watches. Now, usually having the rotor on the dial side isn't possible, but the design of the AGH is no ordinary caliber, which explains where most of your money is invested when it comes to this watch. Now, when it comes to the dial, in my opinion, it isn't anything crazy. The design is unique and the finishing on the case and the dial is slightly above average, but the money spent is mostly going towards that movement in my opinion. Now, the caliber AGH6361 is a genius work of art and innovation that we don't typically see too often nowadays. Most new companies default to something like a 7750, which is a great movement, don't get me wrong, but I'm happy to see Singer decided to go with something a bit more technically impressive. So what do I think of this watch? Well, I absolutely love this watch. For the price point, I feel like they have a lot of competition, but that being said, it is a unique design. It's for someone who wants something that's out of the ordinary, not something typical, and I feel like they actually nailed this design when it comes to that sporting theme. Now, of course, with the 43mm case, I completely understand the size because of the caliber. If they had it at maybe 39mm, maybe even 40mm, I would have preferred it, of course, for my wrist, but that's just my opinion. In association with ExquisiteTimepieces.com, first of all, I would like to thank them for providing this watch for review. I also wanted to urge you guys to check out their website. They're an authorized dealer actually for Singer, as well as other popular brands such as Omega, Blopa, Breguet, Grand Seiko, and many other brands, so you guys don't want to miss it. I also genuinely enjoyed their pre-owned section. They have a lot of really unique watches that you don't typically see all the time, so I tend to check them out a lot. So if you guys just want to check out some cool watches, make sure you check out the pre-owned watch section as well. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comment section below what you think of Singer. And guys, I will see you in the next one.